the grim darkness of the far future, the Imperium of Man weaves a tapestry of lies and half-truths to maintain control over its citizens. Its warriors are heralded as paragons of virtue, crusaders of justice, and defenders of humanity's future. Stories of betrayal and heresy are buried deep, hidden to preserve morale and suppress the grim reality of the Imperium's endless wars. Yet some betrayals are too monumental to silence. Among these tales is the tragedy of Lucius the Eternal, a warrior once celebrated for his mastery of the sword and his unrelenting pursuit of perfection. As a captain of the Emperor's children, Lucius stood out for his unparalleled skill in combat and his pride in his craft. Revered by his peers, he dedicated himself to the ideals of the Great Crusade, fighting under the banner of his Primarch, Fulgrim, to bring the Emperor's vision of unity to the galaxy. Though his arrogance was undeniable, it was matched by his devotion to perfection and his fierce loyalty to the Imperium. But ambition, unchecked, can lead even the greatest warriors astray. When the Emperor's children fell to the temptations of chaos, Lucius's once pristine ideals of perfection were warped into a grotesque obsession with pain and excess, reflecting the dark influence of Slaanesh, the chaos god of decadence. No longer a noble champion of the Imperium, his descent into madness culminated in a horrifying curse of immortality bestowed by his dark patron. Now, Lucius roams the galaxy as an immortal killer, his every step a reminder of the corruption wrought by chaos. Anyone who strikes him down and feels pride in their victory is consumed by his curse, their body and soul twisted to fuel his rebirth. His armor, adorned with the tortured faces of his victims, serves as a chilling testament to his cruelty and arrogance. Armed with demon-infused weapons and driven by an insatiable hunger for violence, Lucius leads his warband of Emperor's children in a never-ending pursuit of bloodshed and decadence. The story of Lucius the Eternal is a cautionary tale, a harrowing reflection of how even the brightest stars of the Imperium can be consumed by the darkness of chaos. Now, let us delve deeper into the life of this once proud warrior and the choices that condemned him to an eternity of torment. The story of Lucius begins on the barren, windswept planet of Chemos, a world of poverty, despair, and unrelenting hardship. Amid this grim backdrop, Lucius stood apart, a rare gem, gifted, arrogant, and destined for greatness. From an early age, he excelled at everything he attempted, his extraordinary talent earning the attention of powerful patrons. Under their sponsorship, his education focused on the martial arts, driven by an insatiable fascination with personal combat. For Lucius, it wasn't just about mastering the blade, it was about the thrill of the duel, the intimate, deadly dance between two combatants. Grand strategies and battlefield tactics held little interest for him. What mattered was the glory of one-on-one combat and the admiration of those who watched. To Lucius, every duel was a masterpiece in the making, his sword the brush that painted his victories. Despite being only 14, Lucius was already on his way to surpassing the greatest weapons masters of Chemos. In every sparring match, his rapier left scars on those less skilled than him. Accidents seemed to follow wherever he fought. Fingers severed, eyes blinded, lives lost. Whispers of concern surrounded his violent tendencies, but his growing reputation silenced any criticism. He toyed with lesser opponents and sparring partners, treating them as little more than playthings to humiliate. Yet against his mentors, he fought with a relentless intensity, driven by an unyielding need to prove himself superior. Lucius's defining moment came during the annual Golden Sword tournament, where his flawless swordsmanship dazzled the crowd and caught the eye of a shadowy observer. In the final round, Lucius faced a champion twice his age, a revered warrior whose skill was matched only by his honor. The duel began as a breathtaking display of skill and respect, each combatant pushing the other to their limits with precise strikes and masterful footwork. Lucius, confident and in control, was the picture of grace, until his opponent executed a flawless feint, disarming him with a flick of the blade. The crowd gasped as Lucius's sword clattered to the ground. For a moment, time seemed to stand still. Lucius, his pride wounded and his composure shattered, felt something snap within him. The humiliation of being disarmed before the crowd ignited a fire in his chest, a cold, unrelenting drive to prove his superiority. With a grim determination, he retrieved his weapon, his movements no longer graceful, but deliberate, calculated, and deadly. What followed was no longer a duel of honor, but a merciless dismantling of his opponent. Lucius's strikes became surgical, his blade moving with chilling precision as he severed veins and limbs with unrelenting efficiency. The crowd, once cheering for the spectacle, now watched in horrified silence. The noble contest they had admired had devolved into a brutal display of vengeance. As the audience erupted in fury, storming the arena, it seemed Lucius's end was near. But in the chaos, a figure emerged, a sergeant of the Emperor's children. Recognizing the raw talent and unyielding determination in Lucius, the stranger intervened, offering him a chance to earn his place as a space marine. Without hesitation, Lucius left Chemos behind, stepping onto a path that would transform him from a celebrated swordsman to one of the most feared champions of chaos. The rise of Lucius within the ranks of the Emperor's children was nothing short of meteoric. His unmatched skill with the blade and unrelenting ambition propelled him to the rank of captain, a position held in high honor by a legion that valued perfection above all else. But Lucius was not just a warrior, he was a performer, and every duel became a stage upon which he could showcase his brilliance. With each victory, Lucius' ego grew larger and more insatiable. He reveled in the adoration of his fellow warriors and drew challengers from other legions eager to test their skills against his own. Yet despite his successes, there was one trait that defined Lucius above all else: his arrogance. It blinded him to any potential flaws or weaknesses, leading him down a dangerous path towards his eventual downfall. As a captain, Lucius became known for his fearlessness and mastery in battle. He single-handedly turned the tide in numerous campaigns, his sword proving unstoppable against any foe. On Hallelujah Prime, he faced off against 6-armed sword golems guarding the heretic Malaqua. When his blade failed to pierce their defenses, Lucius adapted with ruthless efficiency and shattered their skulls with the hilt instead. And on Olkita Mount, he hunted down and impaled the ragged fiends, a fearsome Xenos race, all while still seething from a heated argument with his commanders. These feats only further inflated Lucius's already considerable ego. Despite saving countless lives of his brothers, he never hesitated to boast about his victories. Many began to see that Lucius fought not for the ideals of the Great Crusade, but solely to prove his own superiority. Lucius's arrogance, combined with his unscarred appearance, became a point of ridicule among his brothers. They teased him for being too pretty, a warrior untouched by the brutal realities of war. This perception stung deeply, but the breaking point came after a sparring duel with Garviel Loken of the Lunar Wolves. Though Lucius demonstrated superior swordsmanship during the clash, Loken exploited his pride and delivered a surprising punch that shattered Lucius's nose. The blow marked Lucius both physically and psychologically. The scar was a lasting reminder of his imperfection, one that gnawed at his pride and drove him to obsession. Another humiliating encounter came when Lucius dueled the legendary Azkaelon, captain of the Sanguinary Guard. Though Lucius technically won by drawing first blood, Azkaelon ignored the wound and overpowered him, even throwing him off the dueling platform and robbing Lucius of the perfect victory he wanted. These defeats deeply shook Lucius and further fueled his descent into madness. Determined to never be marked by an unworthy opponent again, Lucius began carving intricate patterns into his own flesh. Deep cuts adorned his face, chest, and scalp, grotesque markings that he saw as badges of victory. To his battle brothers, these acts seemed like strange but commendable displays of devotion to the Legion's ideals of perfection. But in reality, they were reflections of Lucius's growing masochistic tendencies and equating pain with triumph. Things only grew worse when Lucius encountered Serena d'Angelus, a corrupted remembrancer serving Slaanesh. She proudly displayed her own scarred arms, each mark representing a life she had taken. Inspired by her twisted display, Lucius abandoned any remaining vanity and began carving scars on himself after every duel with a worthy opponent. For him, self-mutilation became not just a symbol of victory, but a twisted form of devotion to an emerging ideology centered around pain and perfection. It was a dark descent that hinted at the even darker path that lay ahead for Lucius and the Emperor's children. The glory of the Great Crusade had brought unity and conquest to the galaxy, but beneath its shining surface, treachery brewed. The bonds of brotherhood within the Legiones Astartes were beginning to crack as ambition, jealousy, and whispers of chaos sowed seeds of doubt and division. These fractures would come to a head on the war-torn surface of Isstvan III, where Horus Lupercal, the War Master, made his first calculated move to secure his rebellion against the Emperor. Determined to eliminate any who still clung to their oaths of loyalty to the Imperium, Horus orchestrated a brutal purge that would set the stage for the galaxy's darkest age. In the months leading up to Isstvan III, Horus and the traitor Primarchs devised a ruthless plan to root out loyalists from within their ranks. Loyal Astartes were subjected to careful scrutiny, some openly confronted and judged, others quietly observed for signs of dissent. The process was as methodical as it was cruel, designed to ensure that only those willing to turn their backs on the Emperor would fight under the War Master's banner. For the Emperor's children, this test of loyalty would shatter bonds of brotherhood and set warriors like Lucius on a path toward darkness, ambition, and ultimately damnation. Despite his arrogance and impulsive nature, Lucius was initially included among the loyalists. Though he carried the seeds of the madness that would later define him, he had not yet fully succumbed to the corruption that had gripped the Emperor's children. Lucius's inclusion in the loyalist forces was largely influenced by his close, albeit complicated friendship with Saul Tarvitz, a fellow captain known for his nobility and discipline. Tarvitz's steadfast loyalty to the Emperor had made him a natural leader among the loyalist elements of the Legion, and his bond with Lucius led many to believe that Lucius shared his dedication. Once the loyalists were identified, they were deployed to the planet's surface under the pretense of quelling a rebellion. Unbeknownst to them, this was a stratagem by Horus to isolate and eliminate them. The traitor forces unleashed a devastating virus bombing, intending to annihilate all life on the planet. However, many loyalists, including Lucius and his close comrade Saul Tarvitz, survived the initial onslaught by seeking shelter. Determined to resist, they fortified their positions and prepared for the inevitable ground assault from their former brothers. For 3 months, Lucius fought alongside Tarvitz and their loyalist brothers during the Isstvan III atrocity. Together they defied the traitor forces, cutting down their corrupted former comrades with skill and ferocity. Lucius's unparalleled swordsmanship made him an effective champion of the loyalist cause, earning him the admiration of his peers. Yet as the conflict dragged on, his darker tendencies began to emerge. Lucius's loyalty was put to the test during a fateful encounter with a traitor chaplain. Engaging the chaplain in single combat, Lucius displayed his peerless skill, beheading his opponent with surgical precision. His victory, however, brought him no satisfaction. Instead, it became a moment of bitter introspection. The chaplain's helmet contained a direct vox link to Lord Commander Eidolon, one of Fulgrim's most trusted lieutenants. Holding the helmet in his hands, Lucius faced a critical choice. Lucius could leave the helmet behind and return to the Loyalist lines, continuing the fight alongside Tarvitz. This choice would almost certainly lead to his death, but his sacrifice would immortalize him as a hero of the Imperium. However, Lucius's pride and jealousy overwhelmed him. For months, he had watched as Tarvitz's leadership and tactical brilliance earned the respect and admiration of their comrades. Attention Lucius believed should have been his. In that moment, Lucius chose betrayal. Using the Vox link, he contacted Eidolon and offered his allegiance to the traitor forces in exchange for recognition and reinstatement among the Emperor's children. In the dead of night, Lucius turned on his loyalist brothers. His slaughter was merciless, cutting down dozens of Astartes, including many who had fought beside him since the Great Crusade. Among his victims was Solomon Demeter, a fellow captain who had trusted Lucius implicitly. When Demeter realized the depth of Lucius's betrayal, he confronted him in one final act of defiance. Despite Demeter's skill, Lucius's ruthlessness and precision proved too much, and he struck his former comrade down. Lucius's betrayal culminated in a final confrontation with Saul Tarvitz. Their duel was fierce, a clash of ideals as much as skill. Tarvitz fought for honor, loyalty, and the lives of his brothers, while Lucius fought for his own pride and recognition. Despite Lucius's unmatched skill, Tarvitz's discipline and resolve proved greater. Tarvitz defeated him, but Lucius managed to escape and rejoin the traitors. Though Tarvitz and the other loyalist elements had fought with unmatched bravery, bleeding Horus's forces and costing the War Master valuable time and resources, their defiance could not last forever. Growing impatient with the continued resistance, Horus unleashed the Dies Irae, a massive Imperator-class battle titan, to break the Loyalists once and for all. Against such overwhelming firepower, the defenders of Isstvan III were finally crushed, their sacrifice marking the first true stand against the Horus Heresy. Yet even in death, their defiance would serve as a testament to the ideals they refused to abandon: loyalty, brotherhood, and the unyielding belief in the Emperor. The betrayal at Isstvan III marked the final purification of the traitor legions, as Horus eliminated those who might resist his rebellion. For Lucius, it was the moment he abandoned all pretense of loyalty to the Emperor and embraced his darker impulses. His pride and jealousy had consumed him, and his obsession with perfection now aligned with the corrupting influence of Slaanesh. No longer a champion of the Imperium, Lucius began his descent into madness, leaving behind the bonds of friendship and honor he once shared with Tarvitz. The events on Isstvan III would also pave the way for an even greater atrocity on Isstvan V, an event that would reverberate through history as the Site Massacre. For Lucius, it would be yet another step into madness and the embrace of Slaanesh. The Site Massacre on Isstvan V was a defining moment in the Horus Heresy, a calculated betrayal that would shape the course of the galaxy. It was a day shrouded in darkness, where brother turned against brother, and the forces of chaos reveled in their victory. The Loyalist legions, Iron Hands, Salamanders, and Raven Guard, were dispatched to Isstvan V to launch a counteroffensive against the War Master Horus. Led by their primarchs, Ferrus Manus, Vulcan, and Corvus Corax, they engaged Horus's forces entrenched on the Urgal Plateau. The battle commenced with unparalleled ferocity, as both sides vied for dominance amidst the black sands and ancient fortifications. The Loyalists, their hearts burning with righteous fury and a profound sense of betrayal, fought with relentless aggression against their former brothers. Their hatred fueled their assault, driving them to push back the traitor forces, gaining precious ground and igniting a fierce determination among their ranks. Then came the reinforcements. The Night Lords, Iron Warriors, and Alpha Legion arrived, appearing to fight for the Emperor. Exhausted but hopeful, the Loyalists welcomed their fellow Astartes, believing that victory was near. But this was Horus's greatest deception. As the Loyalists regrouped, their supposed allies revealed their true allegiance. The Night Lord's claws tore through their unsuspecting comrades. The Iron Warriors' cannons unleashed devastating salvos, and the Alpha Legion emerged from the shadows to strike at the Loyalists with brutal efficiency. Pandemonium erupted as Betrayal swept across the battlefield. Outnumbered and overwhelmed, the Iron Hands, Salamanders, and Raven Guard fought desperately, but the trap had been perfectly laid. In a final bid to turn the tide, Ferrus Manus charged toward his former brother Fulgrim, now fully consumed by the corruption of Slaanesh. Their duel was fierce, but Fulgrim struck Ferrus down in a devastating display of power and betrayal. With Ferrus Manus's death, the Loyalists' morale shattered, leaving them vulnerable to the relentless onslaught of the traitor forces. Amid the chaos, Lucius of the Emperor's children reveled in the carnage. He moved through the battlefield with an eerie grace, his blade a blur of deadly precision. Each strike was a grotesque masterpiece, guided by the haunting melodies of Slaanesh that only he could hear. As the screams of his dying foes echoed around him, Lucius laughed, his mind slipping further into madness. For him, Isstvan V was not just a battle, it was a proving ground, a chance to show the galaxy that he was the greatest swordsman of all. Every duel, every kill, was another step into the embrace of chaos and his unholy pursuit of perfection. The massacre was total. The Loyalist forces were crushed, their casualties mounting into the tens of thousands. The Salamanders and Raven Guards suffered catastrophic losses, with Vulcan presumed dead, and Corvus Corax barely escaping the slaughter to carry word of the betrayal to the wider Imperium. Yet for Horus and the traitors, it was a decisive victory. The destruction of the Loyalist legions secured Horus's control over his forces and cleared the path for his march toward Terra. The Site Massacre would go down in history as one of the darkest moments of the Horus Heresy. For Lucius, it was not just a battle, but a transformation. As the blood of his brothers soaked the earth of Isstvan V, Lucius emerged as something far more sinister than an Astartes, a creature fully consumed by chaos, bound forever to the will of Slaanesh. As the Isstvan V massacre came to a bloody and inevitable conclusion, the Astartes of the Third Legion were unaware of the inner turmoil plaguing their revered leader, Fulgrim. Little did they know, their Primarch was trapped, struggling against mental chains that bound him to a demon. Only Lucius, with his keen perception and observation skills, sensed that something was amiss with Fulgrim, but he chose to remain silent. Fulgrim, now possessed by a demon, recognized the emerging touch of the warp within Lucius and gifted him with the silver demon blade. This weapon, once used by the Lair to imprison fragments of demonic essence, still held power despite being devoid of its original spirit. Meanwhile, Fulgrim wielded the formidable anatheme, bestowed upon him by Horus himself. During a strategic meeting aboard Horus's flagship, the Warmaster commanded Fulgrim and the Emperor's children to support a civil war brewing within the Mechanicum on Mars. However, an increasingly unpredictable Fulgrim chose to disobey these orders and instead directed his legion to attack Prismatica 5, a crystal mining world belonging to the Adeptus Mechanicus. Unable to handle Fulgrim's erratic behavior any longer, Lord Commander Eidolon questioned this sudden change in orders, along with other senior members of the Legion. But this challenge proved fatal for Eidolon. As he attempted to voice his concerns, his words only angered the paranoid Primarch. Convinced that Eidolon was mocking him and plotting betrayal, Fulgrim swiftly struck him down with the anatomy. In a disturbing display, Fulgrim then held Eidolon's severed head over casks of victory wine, allowing his blood to mix with the potent drink. This grisly concoction was shared among the senior members of the Third Legion's inner circle as a chilling ceremony that marked Fulgrim's descent into madness and demonic influence. Despite the death of their widely disliked Lord Commander, Lucius, the rising champion of the Emperor's children, saw it as yet another sign of Fulgrim's increasingly erratic behavior. As he observed this unpredictable conduct, Lucius became more intrigued, and his curiosity deepened when he experienced disturbing dreams about the portrait of Fulgrim that hung in La Fenice. This painting, sealed off by the Phoenix Guard after being corrupted by the Maraviglia opera, seemed to hold even deeper secrets. Troubled by Fulgrim's erratic moods and actions, Lucius began to closely monitor his Primarch's every move. He noticed with growing concern Fulgrim's lack of camaraderie and disregard for Legion traditions and rituals. But what truly unsettled Lucius was realizing that Fulgrim's swordsmanship, once unparalleled, was now inferior to his own. The Primarch no longer seemed like the invincible warrior he had always been. These doubts were solidified when Lucius witnessed Fulgrim using powerful psychic abilities during a battle against a Warhound-class Titan on Prismatica 5, abilities that Fulgrim had never displayed before. Haunted by recurring dreams, Lucius' curiosity was piqued, and he decided to take action. Disobeying a direct order, he boldly entered La Fenice, the grand theatre aboard the Pride of the Emperor, flagship of the Emperor's children. This was where the Legion had fallen to Slaanesh during the infamous Maraviglia performance. As he cautiously made his way through the remnants of the once magnificent theatre, Lucius couldn't help but feel a sense of foreboding. Suddenly, his eyes landed on a remarkable portrait above the shattered proscenium arch. Despite the dimly lit surroundings, the painting's brilliance was breathtaking. It depicted Fulgrim in all his glory, adorned in resplendent purple and gold armor as he stood before the grand gates of the Heliopolis, the core of the flagship. Behind him, a majestic phoenix with wings ablaze seemed to emit a reassuring warmth, casting an ethereal glow upon Fulgrim's glistening armor. The golden strands of his hair cascaded down his back in perfect detail, adding to his regal appearance captured flawlessly in the painting. It was a masterpiece that surpassed even the greatest warriors and ignited a sense of awe in all who beheld it. As Lucius stood before the portrait of their Primarch, he couldn't help but feel a sense of unease. The painting captured a depth and intensity that went beyond mortal artistry. The eyes of Fulgrim seemed to follow his every move with a haunting terror, a silent scream forever trapped within its brushstrokes. It was clear to Lucius that something was not right. Their true Primarch was imprisoned within this painting, while an impostor roamed free in his place. Driven by loyalty and determination, Lucius embarked on a risky journey to uncover the dark truths hidden within the Emperor's Children Legion. This task would not be easy, as many of the senior officers were volatile and indulgent, often viewing Lucius as a competitive threat. But with his persuasive words and skilled oration, Lucius managed to convince his brothers that something was amiss with Fulgrim. He appealed to their vanity and egos, ultimately convincing them to join him in freeing their Primarch from whatever had taken hold of him. In a carefully planned ambush, the Brotherhood launched their attack on Fulgrim. Despite suffering casualties, they were able to overpower him and render him unconscious. Fulgrim was then brought to the apothecarium, where the chief apothecary, Fabius Bile, alongside Lucius, Julius Caesaron, and Marius Varisian performed a torturous ritual known as the excruciation. Their goal was to drive out the demonic entity that was believed to possess their Primarch. Fulgrim lay restrained on an examination table as the agonizing process began. But as they delved deeper into his mind, Lucius had a sudden realization. They had been deceived. This was not a demon-controlled body they were dealing with. It was their own Primarch who had been manipulating them all along. Filled with shame and regret for their actions, Lucius immediately kneeled before Fulgrim, who effortlessly broke free from his restraints. The conspirators, humbled by their mistake, submitted themselves to their Primarch. In a surprising turn of events, Fulgrim chose not to punish them, but instead revealed the truth behind his elaborate scheme to Lucius. He explained that he had indeed been possessed by a demonic entity for a time, during which his spirit was trapped within the painting at La Fenice. But rather than succumbing to this torment, Fulgrim used it to gain mastery over demonic powers and warp craft. With this newfound knowledge, he banished the demon from his body and trapped it within the portrait instead. The unsettling dreams that had haunted Lucius were likely sent by the demon in an attempt to manipulate him into freeing it. Fulgrim's apparent decline in swordsmanship and erratic behavior were all part of his elaborate plan to provoke Lucius into challenging him. His disregard for Legion traditions and pursuit of pleasure were signs of his evolution as he embraced the path of Slaanesh. He shared with Lucius his grand vision, to push boundaries and explore realms of pleasure and self-enlightenment beyond anyone's understanding. And now, with the acquisition of valuable crystals from Prismatica 5, they would build a magnificent city of mirrors, dedicated to indulging in sensory experiences and embracing the chaotic realm they now embraced. But Fulgrim's ambitions did not stop there. He revealed that his next step on this journey towards enlightenment through chaos was to join forces with Primarch Perturabo and his Iron Warriors Legion, continuing their pursuit of ultimate experience and understanding in this newfound chaotic world they inhabited. Lucius, alongside the Emperor's children and Iron Warriors, embarked on a perilous journey into the chaotic and uncharted depths of the Eye of Terror. This mission, shrouded in deception and orchestrated by the cunning Fulgrim, was to retrieve the fabled angel Exterminatus, a weapon said to possess the power to reshape galaxies and destroy entire civilizations. Fulgrim claimed the prize lay hidden within the ancient Eldari crone world of Idris, a once sacred planet that had been consumed by the birth of Slaanesh. Now, Idris was a desolate wasteland, ravaged by warp storms, teetering on the brink of annihilation near a massive black hole, a graveyard of the Eldar's once proud empire, and a place where reality itself bent to the will of chaos. However, Fulgrim's true intentions were far more sinister. He had no interest in obtaining a weapon. Rather, he used the myth of the angel Exterminatus as bait to lure Perturabo, Primarch of the Iron Warriors, to join the expedition. Knowing Perturabo's obsession with conquest, siegecraft, and forbidden knowledge, Fulgrim was certain he would be enticed by the prospect of this mission. In reality, Fulgrim's ultimate goal was to ascend to demonhood and become one with Slaanesh. As the joint forces of the Emperor's children and Iron Warriors advanced deeper into Idris, tensions rose between them. The once holy crone world, tainted by Slaanesh's birth, was guarded by spectral Eldari wraith constructs infused with the spirits of deceased Eldar. Despite their efforts, Fulgrim's deceit was eventually exposed and caused a rift between the two traitor legions. This sparked open conflict during the final battle within the citadel of Amon Nishakalis. Amidst the chaos and betrayal, a small group of loyalists aboard the Iron Hand ship Cocytus secretly tracked the traitor fleets. Determined to disrupt Fulgrim's plans, these brave warriors launched a daring attack during the climactic battle. Among them was Nicona Shirokin, a raven guard who had once faced Lucius and left a scar on his pride, a feat few could claim. In the midst of the chaos, Lucius sought out Shirokin in hopes of proving his superiority. To him, the turmoil of Idris was a stage where he could demonstrate his mastery with a blade and show why he was considered the greatest duelist in the galaxy. Armed with twin black swords, Shirokin moved with supernatural speed that defied all laws of nature. Lucius, as arrogant as ever, underestimated his opponent. As the duel began, he struck with unmatched precision, his blade moving like lightning. But Shirokin proved to be even faster, his movements almost ethereal. A sudden strike sliced across Lucius's side, causing immense pain. He staggered but refused to back down, determined to prove himself superior. However, Shirokin's relentless assault left him no chance to recover. Another blow struck Lucius's back, and he could feel his vision blurring from blood loss. Disoriented and vulnerable, a feeling he rarely experienced, Lucius struggled to defend himself against the Raven Guard's onslaught. Shirokin's strikes were precise and deadly, carving through Lucius's defenses with ease. One of his blades cut across Lucius's cheek, mirroring a wound inflicted during their previous encounter. As Lucius fell to his knees and dropped his sword, Shirokin pressed both blades against either side of his neck. "Killing you brings me no joy," declared the Raven Guard. "You are nothing to me, simply a rabid dog that needs to be put down," in a calm yet resolute voice. Before Lucius could respond or taunt his enemy one last time, Shirokin delivered the final blow. His twin swords pierced through both of Lucius's hearts and lungs, inflicting wounds so severe that even his enhanced physiology couldn't save him. And thus, Lucius, once the proud champion of the Emperor's children, fell in silence, his life slowly fading away within the depths of the citadel, marking an end to his pursuit of perfection. Despite being killed by Nicona Shirokin, Lucius's story was far from over. His broken body was discovered by Chief Apothecary Fabius Bile, who saw the potential for genetic experimentation in the famed swordsman. With eagerness and curiosity, Bile brought Lucius aboard the Emperor's children's fleet to study his capabilities. But what happened next shocked everyone, including Bile. Through Slaanesh's will, Lucius was resurrected, his body twisted and scarred but infused with the dark god's power. This marked the beginning of an eternal curse that ensured Lucius could never truly die. With his newfound immortality, Lucius rose through the ranks of the Emperor's children as they fully embraced Slaanesh and indulged in excess and violence throughout the galaxy. On their twisted fleet, brutal gladiatorial arenas showcased Lucius as one of the most feared warriors in the Legion. Each battle was a spectacle of bloodshed and masochistic pleasure as he adorned his armor with the faces of his fallen opponents, forever screaming in agony. But as his dominance and grandiose nature drew attention from others within the Emperor's children, Lucius soon found himself challenged by Lord Commander Sirius during the Scarlet Blade tournament, held in honor of Fulgrim. Far more disciplined and precise than Lucius in combat, Sirius wielded a master-crafted power spear with superior reach. The duel began with a flurry of ferocious strikes from both combatants, but Sirius quickly gained an advantage, sending Lucius reeling across the bloody arena floor. Despite his injuries, Lucius laughed maniacally, seemingly driven into a frenzy by pain and adrenaline. As their fight continued, Sirius used calculated attacks to break down not just Lucius physically, but also mentally. With each blow, it seemed as though Lucius was struggling to stay on his feet and close the distance between himself and Sirius. But each attempt was met with a punishing strike, pushing him closer to defeat. Finally, with one powerful thrust, Sirius impaled Lucius through the chest and pinned him to the ground. As the crowd erupted in cheers for their victor, something unexpected happened. Lucius's laughter grew louder and more deranged, echoing through the arena and unnerving even the most devout followers of Slaanesh. And with one final breath, Lucius died, leaving behind a legacy of bloodshed and pain that would never be forgotten. The aftermath of the duel brought nothing but terror and chaos for Sirius. His once proud body twisted and contorted, his pristine armor melding with his flesh in an indescribable fusion. His screams echoed through the halls of the fleet, a cacophony of agony that drew curious and fearful gazes from his fellow emperor's children. But none dared to intervene, for they knew that Slaanesh had claimed their brother. As the transformation approached its end, Sirius's screams transformed into maniacal laughter. His physical form dissolved, leaving behind only his tormented spirit. In his place stood Lucius the Eternal, his armor now adorned with the grotesque and twisted face of Sirius frozen in eternal torment. The Dark Prince had ensured that Lucius's curse would endure. Whoever struck him down in pride or satisfaction would become the vessel for his rebirth. At the next grand gladiatorial event, Lucius strode into the arena with unwavering confidence. He bowed theatrically to the roaring crowd, proudly displaying his new armor, marked by the screaming face of Sirius. High above on his throne, Fulgrim smiled in approval. Slaanesh's chosen champion had returned, stronger and more feared than ever before. Those who once sought to defeat Lucius in battle now hesitated, knowing the terrible fate that awaited them should they succeed. His very existence had become a cruel joke played by Slaanesh, a mockery of mortality itself. No matter how many times he was slain, Lucius would always return, his twisted laughter echoing through the void, promising agony to any who dared to challenge him. Lucius the Eternal is a figure who perfectly embodies the perverse extremes of the Emperor's children and the corrupting influence of Slaanesh. Once a proud warrior, his unrelenting pursuit of perfection and his insatiable thirst for recognition led him down a path of madness, betrayal, and eternal damnation. From his early days as a gifted swordsman to his cursed immortality, Lucius's story is one of ambition, unchecked, and hubris rewarded by the dark gods. For nearly 10,000 years, Lucius has haunted the galaxy, defying death itself through the grotesque blessing of Slaanesh. His curse ensures that anyone who strikes him down and feels even a flicker of satisfaction in the act will be consumed by the Dark Prince's power. Their body becomes the vessel for Lucius's rebirth, and their face, twisted in agony, is forever etched into his armor of shrieking souls. This horrific immortality has made Lucius a living legend, a name spoken in fear among the Imperium and revered among the traitor legions. Lucius's story is not simply about his martial prowess, although he is undoubtedly one of the greatest swordsmen to ever live. It is about what happens when a soul is consumed by its own ambitions. His obsession with perfection began as a pursuit of excellence, but quickly devolved into a fanatical need to dominate and humiliate. Even as his physical form has been scarred and reshaped countless times, his arrogance and vanity remain at the core of his being, driving him to ever greater heights of cruelty and self-destruction. As a champion of the Emperor's children, Lucius is the perfect embodiment of their descent into depravity. His every action is a performance, his every duel a grotesque spectacle for the adoration of his peers and the approval of Slaanesh. He thrives on pain, both inflicted and endured, seeing it as a measure of his own perfection. His victories are celebrated not for their strategic value, but for the sheer excess of bloodshed, suffering, and spectacle they produce. On the battlefield, Lucius is more than a warrior. He is a force of nature, an avatar of chaos that sows terror and despair wherever he appears. Clad in his horrific armor, adorned with the faces of his victims, and wielding demonic weapons, he cuts through his foes with lethal precision and sadistic glee. His presence alone can break the morale of even the staunchest defenders of the Imperium, for they know that to kill Lucius is to risk losing their own identity, becoming yet another screaming face on his cursed armor. Beyond the battlefield, Lucius represents the deeper tragedy of the Horus Heresy and its aftermath. He was once a proud Astartes, a loyal servant of the Emperor, and a brother to warriors like Saul Tarvitz. His fall from grace mirrors the fall of the Emperor's children as a whole, a legion that once strived for perfection, but ultimately became enslaved to their own excesses. Lucius's transformation into a servant of Slaanesh is a cautionary tale of how even the noblest ambitions can be corrupted by pride and unchecked desire. Lucius the Eternal's legacy stretches across both mortal and immortal realms. Among the forces of chaos, he is revered as a symbol of Slaanesh's favor and the ultimate expression of their god's will. Among the Imperium, he is feared as a living nightmare, an enemy that cannot be permanently defeated. His name has become synonymous with hubris, pain, and the eternal cycle of death and rebirth, a cycle that only serves to strengthen the legend of Lucius the Eternal. As long as there are warriors who seek glory or satisfaction in his defeat, Lucius will continue to walk the galaxy, leaving behind a trail of broken bodies and shattered souls. He is not just a champion of Slaanesh. He is a testament to the seductive and destructive power of chaos itself. In Lucius, the Imperium is reminded that some enemies can never truly be killed, for their power lies not in their physical form, but in the dark will of the gods they serve. In the grim darkness of the far future, Lucius the Eternal remains a chilling reminder that the price of ambition is often far greater than the reward, and some victories can never be claimed without dire consequences.